Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay in the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack It Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
The Black and Gold Banneret Podcast is brought to you by the Unger Real Estate Group, powered by eXp Realty, proudly serving Orange, Seminole, and Lake counties. Call 407-790-9957 or visit WeSellOrlando.net. What's up, Night fans? Welcome to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon, Eric Lopez with you here. Getting us out a little bit later than usual on Thursday afternoon, but here we are. And, man, just like that, we're in basketball season, and you know that because it's flipping frigid outside right now in Central Florida, ELO. They keep talking about football weather. I mean, I felt like I was back in Atlanta when I walked out this morning.
Wow. Yes, it is very cold. I don't plan on going out anytime soon, fortunately. But let's be honest. I mean, cold for us. There's probably about every state in the Northeast would take exactly our weather compared to other places.
Fair point.
Let's be honest. This is fine. If this is what we have to tolerate, then I'm okay with it.
Are you like the opposite of that meme with the dog where he's like, "This is fine" with the coffee cup while his apartment is on fire?
Listen, my sister lives in Manassas, Virginia. They've had blizzards up there. They got snow. They have trouble getting out of the house. I have a friend in Houston. They had an ice storm. I'm like, all right, I get it. We're not that bad off. I get it. It's good.
We know that it's basketball season now because it's cold. So we're going to spend a lot of time
Speaking
on
of
basketball.
Cold, shooting. What?
Yeah, we'll talk about that. UCF men's and women's basketball this week. We're going to do a deep dive on both teams, just kind of give you like a little sort of update on exactly where they stand, not just in the conference, but in the national picture overall. So we're going to look at men's basketball first, women's basketball second. And then from there, we're also going to talk a little bit more about football. We're going to talk about the scheduling thing with UCF, right? And discuss. So the whole thing about how they put the billboard up in Tuscaloosa, but hey, how Alabama have a home and home. We got a couple of we got an opinion about scheduling that we're going to share with you. So
right, because obviously it was official. We knew about this, but it was official with this week with the ACC schedule coming out for that Pittsburgh and North Carolina is on the UCF schedule in 2018. UCF goes to North Carolina September 15th. Pittsburgh, they play Pittsburgh on the 29th. Yeah, so we got
I got Syracuse fans who, by the way, are in the ACC. And for those of you who don't know, I went to graduate school at Syracuse, so I'm an alum of both UCF and Syracuse. And they're calling UCF out saying, oh, congratulations, you got UNC and Pitt on your non-conference schedule. That's really going to do you guys wonders. Hey, shut up, Syracuse. You're playing Holy Cross next year. I thought, holy Lord almighty, I thought Holy Cross gave up their football program 20 years ago. But anyway, we'll get to that in a second. But let's go to basketball right now. Speaking of like Syracuse, right? Let's talk men's basketball and start. Oh, by the way, before we get to that, don't forget to follow us at blackandgoldbanneret.com, facebook.com/blackandgoldbanneret, and UCF_Banneret on Twitter. You can also follow me at Jeff_Sharon. Follow Eric at Eric Lopez Elo. Don't forget to also follow Brian Murphy at Spokes_Murphy and Derek Warden at _DS Warden, our staff members here at Black and Gold Banneret. As well, you can also listen to this podcast via the podcast app of your choice, be it Apple Podcasts, Google Play, SoundCloud, Stitcher, TuneIn, whatever it is that you may want. So let's go ahead and dive right in with men's basketball. All right, in the thick of conference play now, Eric Lopez, and Tuesday night was a rough night for UCF at home against Cincinnati. Remember, UCF defeated Cincinnati at home last year in a game that was very similarly styled. This time around, it was televised on CBS Sports Network, but UCF unable to bring the victory on the home court, falling to Cincinnati, number 11 Cincinnati, mind you, 49-38 in a game that was every bit as ugly as it sounds. The Knights actually led by 4 at the break, 19-15, but then Cincinnati, who scored, like I said, who scored only 15 points in the first half, more than doubled it in the second. They outscored UCF 34-19. Give the Knights points for consistency, 19 points in each half. But this was a Cincinnati team that shot 6 of 26 in the first half and then went 13 of 28 in the second. So almost 50%. Meanwhile, UCF just couldn't get anything to fall. 7 of 31 in the first half, 8 of 19 in the second. The free throw struggles continue for UCF. 3 of 10 at the line. 5 of 17 from three-point range were the Knights. Leading scorer for UCF. No scorers in double figures in this game. Leading scorers were Terrell Allen with 7, Taco Fall with 7. B.J. Taylor made his debut. He's back on the floor. He finished with 6 points, 1 rebound, and 1 assist on 3 of 7 shooting. Looked very tentative out there, like he was still feeling everything out. And when you make your return against the team like as good defensively as Mick Cronin's Cincinnati Bearcats, I guess that's to be understood. Gary Clark led all scorers with 17 points and 15 rebounds for Cincinnati as the Bearcats actually got outboarded by UCF 36-35, but it didn't matter. Elo, you were there. I thought I watched on television. I thought this game set the game of basketball back about 60 years. What did you think?
Wow. Here's the thing.
It was awful. It was an awful.
Well, I've had this argument with people. I love this. So we always poo-poo like defensive games. Oh, it's terrible, this. But yeah, when we get a football game that's 62-55, it's the greatest game that's ever been played.
Yes.
Why? Why is that?
Because it's fun. It's fun.
There's no defense being played. How's that?
Defense isn't fun.
Well, I don't think it's a bad game because teams are playing defense. Look, anybody that was surprised by that score, I wasn't. I mean, you mentioned last year was a 53-49 game. You're talking about 2 of the top defenses in the country. It's a fact. Yeah. You look at field goal percentage in the country, Cincinnati's number 3 in the country, only giving up 36%. UCF's number 5. Cincinnati's number 2 in the country in scoring defense. UCF's number 3. These are 2 of the top defenses in the country. Mick Cronin is one of the top defensive coaches in the college basketball. So I'm not surprised that this was a low-scoring, quote, ugly game because these 2 teams play 40 minutes of defense. So I knew that whoever got to 50 was probably going to be the winner, or at least in this case,
50.
Close. Well, 49 is pretty good. I mean, close enough. So I'm going to defend both teams on that regard. I was not surprised by this. And guess what? If these 2 teams play again, it's going to be another game in the low-scoring deal. Now,
I'll say this, though. Yeah. Okay, there's a difference between a defensive struggle that's an entertaining, close, intense basketball game. I think we've both seen that plenty of times. But this wasn't that. I mean, this wasn't a close game, I thought, by any real means. There was only 1 tie, only 2 lead changes. It was basically a tale of 2 halves. And in the second half, boy, Cincinnati just they figured out UCF's defense and they got some easy buckets in the second half. This was if it was close like last year's game, I would see what you mean, but this game was ugly, and it really kind of wasn't close. When Cincinnati jumped out, I think it was by about 5 points in the second half. I thought the game was over. And I tweeted with 4 minutes to go, I said, it's taken UCF. I think UCF was down 9. They were down 45-36 with about 4 minutes left. And I tweeted out, I said, It's taken UCF 36 minutes to score 36 points. Does anyone out here think that they're going to score 9 in the next 4? I don't.
No, that's fair, but Cincinnati's really good. Wichita State's gotten a lot of the attention, but Cincinnati might still be the best team in the American Conference.
I want to see those two teams hook up.
Yeah, I agree. I think those are the two best teams in the American Conference. I think those two, and certainly SMU made a statement this week knocking off Wichita State on Wednesday night. But look, they're very good. Cincinnati's a legit team, and they're tough to score on. And UCF's got problems offensively. You're absolutely right about that. I mean, B.J. Taylor is back. He's limited in minutes. You can't expect B.J. in his first game back to carry the load offhand. And unfortunately, there's some guys that had up bad nights, and there's definitely been an issue of shooting the ball with this ball club compared to last year. Let's be honest, they miss Matt Williams. Perimeter shooting, and they miss and I think we've underestimated guys like Banyard from last year that maybe the stats didn't show a lot, but they made key shots from time to time. So you're right. This is not a great shooting team. They've missed B.J. Taylor. Let's be honest. I think when we were coming into the season and the expectations, the belief was that B.J. and Aubrey Dawkins was going to carry the offense. Well, Aubrey Dawkins is out for the year, and B.J. has been out all year except for the first half of the first game of the season. So where is the offense going to come from? Certainly A.J. Davis had a rough night. That would be the target that should have probably, you got to get more out of him. The youngsters, the rest of the rosters, young players are always up and down, and that unfortunately they were down in this case against a very good Cincinnati team. So you're right. Look, the offense, it's had its issues, and that is a concern moving forward when you're playing the Cincinnatis and the Wichita States in this league. That's where you're going to get exposed. Now, I will say this: BJ's back. Mm-hmm. Let's see. As he gets himself back into shape, as he gets himself back into chemistry with this team, let's see if this team now gets better as we move forward. Because if you would have told me back in October that B.J. Taylor would have missed all these games, I would not have thought that this basketball team would be where they're at right now.
Right. Well, they're 12-6 right now.
Right.
But 3-3 in the conference. They're in a 4-way tie for 5th. With SMU, Tulane, and UConn. Cincinnati is undefeated and 5-0 in the conference, 16-2 overall. Wichita, which you mentioned, 15-3, 5-1 in the league with that loss to SMU. Houston and Memphis are tied for 3rd in the conference at 4-2. Houston's 14-4, Memphis is 13-6. So yeah, they're in a pretty good spot right now. We checked their RPI right now. It's at 60. They're going to, like I think you said earlier, Eric, they're going to have to get into the 40s, by the way, in order for that to have an event. Now, I will say this, though. Elsewhere in the American, let's see, what do you have here? So you have UCF at 60. SMU, by virtue of that win over Cincinnati, jumped from 81 to 59 in the RPI.
Yep. Wichita State win.
Yep. Houston fell down 4 spots from 52 to 56. Temple moved up 4 spots to 50, and I'm looking for see who else is it. Okay, so Wichita's 28, down from 18, and Cincinnati's at 24, up from 26, and they're the top RPI team in the American right now. Is Cincinnati at 24? So looking at that, yes, obviously UCF has some work to do if they want to boost the RPI. In order to get to the
but they have opportunities. They have opportunities moving forward to do that. They have 2 games with Wichita State. They have a game with SMU here at home. They're going to have to win some of those games to build the resume. Plus, remember, there is also the conference tournament, which is at Amway Center. So you make a deep run in the conference tournament. So they got a lot of opportunities. What this team needs to do now, they got to gel. This team has got to gel with B.J. Taylor. I expect personally, and I think Coach Dawkins alluded to this in the postgame, and that is I expect to see B.J. Taylor play a lot of 2-guard as well as the point guard with Terrell Allen playing the point, because I think B.J. is going to have to be the number 1 scorer on this team most nights, and instead of being a distributor, he may have to carry the offense at certain points of the game. So and help these young guys along. So I don't look for that But look, it's still a lot of time left in the basketball season. We're still in January. There's still a lot of big games. So I wouldn't throw in the towel on the season based on the loss to Cincinnati. Certainly an opportunity loss there, because certainly a home game against Cincinnati is an opportunity there to put a big name win there. A ranked team in the country. Didn't happen. But the good news is you're in a conference where you're still going to get multiple, if not more, opportunities to build your resume. But you got to win games, no question about it. And to do that, they have the defense to do it. The defense is going to give them a chance to win every game. Basically, they're going to keep them in the game. But you're right, the offense, which has been difficult to see at times, has to step up. And now that BJ's back, now I'm ready to see how this develops in the coming games, in the coming weeks, how this offense looks with BJ Taylor.
Interestingly enough, yeah, and this is going to be the hard part, like you said, and I think Coach Dawkins alluded to it in the postgame. He's right now, BJ's on a bit of a minutes limit.
Yeah.
And they're trying to be very careful with him. And, boy, this is just hard, figuring out how to play with your best player who's basically rehabbing an injury while you're in the thick of conference play. This is not an easy task, what they're trying to do. So it's just – I don't know how they're going to do it. It's going to be tough. But what you do have is this. You got USF coming up in the Sun Dome on Saturday before you go out to Wichita on Thursday. That would be next Thursday, a week from when we're recording this, January 25th. Then your next home game is against UConn on Wednesday, January 31st, and then Houston on Saturday, February 3rd. Interestingly enough, after that, as we're looking at the next 5 games, they go back to they have the return trip to Cincinnati on Tuesday, February 6th. That game is not being played at Cincinnati. It is scheduled to be played at BB&T Arena in Highland Heights, Kentucky, which is actually the home arena of Northern Kentucky University, NKU, the Norse. They are, because of the fact that there's actually an article in here on Cincinnati.com that goes into detail about this. So this is because Cincinnati is undergoing their home arena, Fifth Third Arena in Cincinnati, is undergoing an $87 million renovation. So Cincinnati's playing their home games at Northern Kentucky. Interestingly enough, the women's team is playing their home games at a high school, St. Ursula Academy, in East Walnut Hills. So, and this is according to Cincinnati.com. So,
that's interesting. That's very interesting. You got 2 teams in the league that are not playing home games in their homes. Houston, which is getting a revamped and a new arena, they're playing off campus for their home games this year in various places in the state of Texas. I know recently when they played Tulsa, they played it at Texas Southern University. They were playing some of their home games at Rice campus. So that's interesting. You got 2 teams that are at the top of the league that are not playing and on campus, at least at home, which is very interesting. Yeah,
UCF does not have a trip to Houston this year, so we don't have to worry about that. But still, that's what we're looking at we're now almost through January and heading toward we're in mid-January basically and heading toward February. So as I'm looking at the schedule right now, Eric, 12-6, 3-3, where do you think this team has to get in order to have a shot at maybe an at-large?
Well, let's go through the rest of the read off their schedule. I'm going to tell you which games I think they're key here, and
all right.
and
they're 12-6 right now.
Yeah,
at USF.
They got to win that. You have to beat USF. USF is terrible. Their RPI is terrible.
You USF too because you got them twice.
And that's the scary thing. This is the nervous thing about this. It's a rivalry game. USF's going to be ready to play these games. These 2 specific games, they're going to be prepared to play and give it their best shot. And with the offense the way it is, this is a concern on Saturday at the Sun Dome. They have to win these 2 games, and this Saturday game is a tricky game. It's a 6:00 Saturday game. You're just coming off a Cincinnati game. You mentioned it. They're going to Wichita State after this game. You cannot look ahead here. I'm very nervous about this game, Jeff. I might not even sleep until tip-off of this game. That's how nervous I am about this game. But they have to win those 2 games they play against USF. But I am definitely concerned about this Saturday. Yeah. Big flag. Please do not take this game lightly. Do not overlook this game.
All right, then at Wichita.
That's
going to be tough. Home for UConn and Houston.
Those are two big home games. You got to protect your home court. Obviously, UConn.
If you're
got
for real,
best.
I think you win. You sweep that home double
got
right
to.
there.
Got to.
At Cincinnati.
Tough, right?
Excuse me,
tough.
Versus Cincinnati at NKU.
The good news about that is that obviously Cincinnati is not in their comforts of their arena. On the other hand, the bad thing is you're playing in an arena UCF hasn't played in. So I'm going to project. I'll project that as a loss, but it is an opportunity to win there, obviously.
All right, so
I think they have if they're going to pull an upset on the road, I think their best shot is that Cincinnati game as opposed to Wichita State.
All right, then at Memphis.
I tweeted this out last week after the UConn game. I think one of the keys for them to make the tournament was I felt they needed to split two trips that they have historically struggled in. Obviously, at UConn being one of them, and then at Memphis. We've had Taylor Young on this program talk about how tough it is to play there because of the rims. It's an NBA arena. Memphis is down, although they just blew out Connecticut, so it's not like they're a joke. But that's a tough place. UCF historically has struggled there. They have never won there against Memphis, going back to Conference USA days. I think, to me, they have to find a way to win that game. But I understand it's not easy. But you have to show in your resume that you can win road games. So I have to say, yes, that's a game that you got to win.
So you're saying right now in their next six, probably split in the next six, 3-3. That would get them to 15-9.
Yeah.
All right. Here is rapid fire, okay? And I mean rapid fire because you're not good at rapid fire here. Let's do the last six. Home for USF.
Win.
Home for SMU.
11 a.m. tip. You got to win that. Got to win that.
At Tulsa.
Tough place to play. Another historic place that they haven't played well. I'm going to say they lose that game just to be balanced.
At Temple.
Got to win that. They won there last year. Got to win that this year, I think.
Yeah, Temple's not very good this year. 9-9 overall.
Tough schedule.
Yeah, that's true. But they're off to a bad start in conference as well. And then you wrap up home for Wichita and home for Tulane.
Boy, if you could pull off that Wichita win, man.
Yeah, that's big.
That would be huge. But here's the X factor in this. You're mentioning the regular season. There's a conference tournament in Amway Center. You got to make some noise in that tournament. You can't bow out early. If you can get to the semifinal, if you can get to the final, you really put yourself in a great spot. So again, that's what I'm talking about. There are opportunities for this team to play themselves into the NCAA tournament. Obviously, if you win the conference tournament, you're an automatic bid. But there are opportunities. You just ran off that schedule. There are numerous games. I think 20 wins is that magic number. If you can get to 20 wins, get to about 11 conference wins, you put yourself in position. But you got to get some resume wins that will bump the RPI, whether that be Wichita State, whether that be Cincinnati, or even an SMU type of win.
Here's how I'm calculating it out right now. All right, so you have them down at basically going 7-5 the rest of the way. Okay.
Okay.
That would get them to 19-11 overall and 10-8 in the league.
Yep.
That would be including, all right. As I'm looking through 7-5. Let's see. USF. Yeah, 1, 2. So that's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So okay. So you're going to have to steal some. You're going to have to steal some along the way. You're going to have to steal the SMU game. You're going to have to steal a Memphis game, the Cincinnati.
Yep.
If you can get those and then hold serve at home, then you're looking at 22-10 and then 11 wins in conference and like 11-7.
Right, it's big swing. Yeah.
So
and then you got to and you still got conference tournament games which people will be watching. So how you finish will play a big role. So again, it's there to be had, but you're going to have to win at some of these places. They haven't won there before, and I think that's a key part of this season and will determine whether this team is an NCAA tournament team or an NIT team.
Right. All right, so that's what we're looking at right now. Next game is at USF in Tampa, Saturday at 6 p.m. Next home game, January 31st. That's a Wednesday night, 9 p.m. tip on CBS Sports Network. By the way, the USF game's on ESPNU. But the 9 p.m. tip, that's a late tip for the
welcome to prime
game.
time, baby.
I know, yeah, that's
welcome.
prime time.
You wanted
on
the big
CBS
show
Sports Network. Yep. So that's what we're looking at on Wednesday night for the UConn game, and then Houston right after that on ESPNU at noon on February 3rd. So that's where your UCF men's basketball team is looking right now. Stick around. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to hop over to women's basketball. Check in with Coach Abe's team as they make their way through the conference schedule. Check in their RPI, and do they have a shot to maybe get that coveted number 2 spot behind UConn in the American? Stick around. The Black and Gold Banneret Podcast is back after this. The Black and Gold Banneret Podcast is brought to you by the Unger Real Estate Group, powered by eXp Realty. Sam Unger and his team proudly serve Orange, Seminole, and Lake counties, specializing in buying, selling, and new construction. Sam is a proud UCF graduate, class of 2006, and he's such a dedicated Knight fan that right now, if you work with him as your realtor, he will donate a portion of his commission to the UCF Football Excellence Fund in your name. So if you're ready to buy a new home or sell your current home, upgrade or downsize, Sam and his team have you covered so you can find the right home at the right price in the right location. So give him a call right now at 407-790-9957. Again, that's 407-790-9957. Or visit on the web at WeSellOrlando.net. Again, that's WeSellOrlando.net. You can also reach them on Facebook at facebook.com/WeSellOrlando. Get in touch with the Unger Real Estate Group today and make finding your dream home a reality.
Hello, Knight Nation. I'm Andrew Fegley.
And I'm Trey Strelko. Where are we? This isn't our usual spot.
It looks like we've landed in the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast.
Oh, yeah. I've heard of those guys.
You know, Nightline has UCF sports covered.
Week in and week out, we bring you interviews with newsmakers and in-depth analysis of UCF sports.
Subscribe to our weekly podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Be sure to subscribe to Nightline on YouTube, like us on Facebook, and follow us on Twitter at UCF_Nightline.
Trace, can we go back to the 1148 studios now and start working on our next all-new Nightline?
How do we get out of here? Go Knights!
Charge on.
Now back to you guys in the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast.
Welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon, Eric Lopez with you. Don't forget to follow us at Black and Gold Banneret, UCF_Banneret on Twitter, and Facebook.com/Black and Gold Banneret. And follow this podcast on Google Play, Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and TuneIn. All right. Let's dive. We talked about a deep dive on men's basketball. Let's do a deep dive on women's basketball right now. So they're 12-7, 4-2 in the league, and coming off of a win over Tulane on the home floor on the American Digital Network, 59-51. Eric Lopez, you were there. Good for them to get off the schneid after back-to-back losses to number 1 UConn and number 25 USF on the road for both of those meetings. USF just did USF things in that game. I mean, it looked like everything that they did wrong last year in the matchup in the Sun Dome they did right this time around. But Coach Abe's team shakes it off. They get the 59-51 victory against the Green Wave. And coming up, they've got Saturday at 2 p.m. against SMU. That's on the American Digital Network as well. But the Knights actually led by a bunch more than the score indicated. They jumped out 17-8 after the first, and they were up 47-32 after 3, I think, Eric.
They had about a 15-point lead.
Yeah, and then they kind of let Tulane back into it. But
Tulane made a run, a little full-court press, some turnovers, some missed shots, free throws, kind of got Tulane back. I mean, it's no surprise. These two teams have played for a lot of years. Going back to Conference USA, they played twice last year, including in the quarterfinals of the conference tournament. It's a battle. In fact, you mentioned I was the sideline reporter for the broadcast on the American Digital Network. In fact, we're going to play. I had a chance to talk to Coach Abe on the postgame show about that fact, the fact about Tulane being a tough win, a tough, scrappy team, and how they were able to win this game led by her star guard, and what does this mean going into SMU on Saturday?
Yeah, well, you said it, defense, and just we did a good job of subbing people in and out, and we stayed out of foul trouble. That's huge for us because if we're in foul trouble, our bench is really small, and so we just did a good job, and we controlled Kobe. I mean, I don't know how many points she ended with, but that's huge for us.
Zakiya Saunders, I mean, you've talked about her since she arrived here. Her first double-double was a UCF night, career-high 12 rebounds for her, and got some really big loose balls for you down the stretch. Talk about her game there, rising to the occasion there when you needed her.
Yeah, and we had a nice little chat at halftime, like we can't let up. And Z's been with us for 5 years now and been to the NCAA tournament 3 times, so she knows what big games are. And we have never beat Tulane here at home, ever. This is the first time that we've ever beat Tulane here at home, so that was a big win for us. They're a great team, and they're very well coached.
How do you take this game now to your next game against SMU? They're going to be back home here and keep that intensity that you want from your team.
Yeah, I mean, it starts with Z and KK and Aaliyah and I. Those are the 4 that have to come ready to go every single game and be focused every single game and play tough and, play together. None of our games are ever pretty, but they're wins, so that's what's important.
All right, that was Coach Abe with me on the postgame, courtesy of the America Digital Network. Quick postgame after the win, and she mentioned it there in the interview and talked about, look, they got some defensive plays, they made some big plays, but how about Kay Saunders, as they refer to her in that building, Jeffrey? She's a newcomer, but yet she's been around the program. She's been, as she mentioned in the interview, she played at Albany for Coach Abe.
Yep.
Zakiya Saunders, I've been so impressed with her, and I had a chance to talk to her again in the postgame. Had a career-high 12 rebounds, first double-double. Such a poised guard. She makes the little, she makes those little plays that make a big difference. You know what I mean? Like when Tulane's making the run, she's the one that will get the loose ball rebound. She's the one that gets that big pass to get that basket. I remember talking to Coach Abe last year when I was preparing to do a couple of broadcasts and shoot-arounds, and she wouldn't, Saunders was sitting out because she was transferred from Albany, and she just wouldn't, she's like a coach on the court, and I could see why. And she's such a difference maker to this team. And I thought KK Wright had a heck of a second half, and she's just a sophomore from Orlando.
Better this year, huh?
Hasn't she? And boy, I'm impressed. What's your thoughts on Masseny Kaba, who's had to step up inside because they've had injuries inside with Fifi and Dor out and so much, a couple of front court players are shorthanded with injuries. Masseny Kaba, to me, who got them off to a fantastic start inside with a good low post game. She's just a freshman. Coach talks about how she runs like a gazelle. I mean, I tell you, I've been impressed with some of the youngsters on this team, Jeff, and I know we're talking about this year, but with Kaba and KK Wright, a couple of youngsters there. I just very impressed with Kaba. I know you've gotten a chance to see her, but don't you – I mean, she's kind of the future of this team. I mean, I've been really – especially in women's basketball, you don't see a lot of players that can dominate in the post. Heck, you don't even see it in the men's game that much anymore, right? Everybody's a perimeter.
Yeah.
I love her game, and she's got that presence inside. Like Tulane had no answers for her in the first half, and she can run up and down the court. I mean, the future is just unbelievable. I can't wait for this kid can develop into. It might be. I mean, by the time her career ends, maybe the best big person. I don't know what's the politically correct way to say it. Big man, but is it big woman? I don't know how you say it, but whatever. You know what I'm saying.
Big, I guess you could say.
One of the best bigs in the history. Thank you. See, that's why you went to Syracuse and I did. One of the best bigs this program's had.
Yeah, there are times out there when she still looks raw. I mean, she is just a freshman, right?
Yeah.
And at 6'3", and you're 18, 19 years old, you're still trying to figure out how to be 6'3" when you're that young. But she really has developed, and she's had to because of the injuries that UCF has faced with Tolu and McCory being out,
yep.
Fifi and Dor being out. There's your starting center and power forward right there, right? So Kaba has had to step in and play. Nye Schuler's had to, instead of coming off the bench, she's actually been in the starting lineup as more or less like a kind of a swing player over there. And you mentioned Zakiya Saunders, who that's the experience I think that you're talking about. And even though she was 4 of 12 from the field, she had 11 points and 12 rebounds. 12 rebounds for a 5'9" guard. That tells me something about her experience, that her nose for the ball. She's really been she's become more and more indispensable to the team, I think, as the season has gone by. You mentioned KK finished with 14 points, 3 rebounds, 7 assists in that game. Because they have been without, because Zy Lewis graduated last year, and Coach Abe kind of alluded to this at times last year, that basically I do have a 3-point shooter and I'm going to use that weapon, but no one else should be shooting threes. Really, she wants to work the ball down low. She wants to work the game from the inside out. And so we've seen UCF, basically eschew the 3-point shot. They're only 1 of 4 in this game. And I'm looking at the team statistics here for 3-point field goal percentage. UCF is close to the bottom at 26.5%. But this is what's pretty unbelievable is UCF has attempted 113 3-point shots this year. The next lowest in the conference in that department, the team that's taken the next fewest 3-point shots is Wichita State, and they've taken more than twice as many as UCF. They've taken 238. If you're wondering who takes the most, it's USF with 474, and they've hit 173 of them. They're second in percentage at 36%. UConn is hitting 39% from 3-point range. So that'll give you an indication of what you're looking at. As far as UCF is concerned, they just don't want to shoot. It's just not our game.
But you know what? I'm going to give them credit for not forcing it, because you and I have seen a lot of women's basketball. There have been a lot of teams.
Yeah.
Right? No, don't you agree with me? How many times we've seen teams either playing UCF or even on television that are not good perimeter shooting teams, but shoot them anyway.
Right?
They're like, why? And that's why you see a lot of low-scoring games. So I give them credit for not forcing the issue.
And let's
Obviously
also give the defense credit, too, because this is a UCF team that's second in the league in scoring defense behind UConn, and not that far behind, really. UConn's giving up 55.6 a game. UCF's giving up 56.2. So you can hang your hat on that. The only difference is that they're second to last in scoring offense at only 59.5 a game. So the question is always going to be with this team is, where are the points going to come from?
Well, and the thing is, teams are locking in and focused on Aaliyah Gregory this year. If you notice, she's been quiet to this point because teams are trying to take her out of the game. Now, I will point out that it was around this time of year last year where she took it to a next level in conference play. So there's still time for her to do that. But part of the issue this year is teams are trying to focus on her and make others beat them. Right. So
the secret's out.
Yeah, exactly. So, but their defense will give them chances to play. They're playing, they played 7 in the win against Tulane. That's the way they are right now with the way they are banged up. So, it's a good bounce back win for them. Look, I not to make excuses for them. I thought they had a rough schedule. The conference didn't do them any favors by you're playing at UConn, all right, which, that speaks for itself, right? But then you're following that, you got to play at USF, which are arguably the 2 best teams in the league. You and I have seen USF. You've seen them up close in person last year.
I don't think there's an argument. I think they are the 2 best teams in the league.
Right. I mean, you mentioned how they can shoot the ball. USF's good. And, UCF kind of ran into, I think, a juggernaut. USF was motivated for that game. I was exchanging tweets with our friend Colin Sherwin, who's obviously a longtime USF guy. Mm-hmm. He has covered that program. They had that game circled. On Sunday
after last year.
Absolutely, because that's all they heard about is how they lost to the UCF for the first time in 19 years. So they were ready to go in that game, whereas UCF was coming off the UConn game, which is an emotional game. And sometimes when you beat a team like you did last year, you think, we could do it again real easy. Well, except USF took it to a different level. But that's a tough back-to-back. I mean, there is no more tougher back-to-backs in this conference than going to UConn and USF. So it is what it is. The good news is you got those 2 out of the way. What they got to do is they've won the games they're supposed to, and they got SMU coming up at Saturday. Protect your home court, and then hopefully Aaliyah gets going offensively, and that offense improves a little bit. But I think the team is, considering the injuries they've had. I mean, we've talked so much about the men and having all their injuries, but the women's had a ton of injuries, especially inside, which was a big part of their success last year. So they're still in the mix, and they have opportunities. What's going to be interesting with them as far as postseason is concerned, UConn and USF, which will be locks for the NCAA tournament. I think the interesting question will be, does the American get 3 teams into the NCAA? Do they get 4 in from the NCAA tournament? And if they do, I think the contenders are Houston and UCF for that 3rd slot, maybe 4th slot.
Well, right now that's the way it would be. Obviously, UConn at 16-0 overall, 5-0 in the league, leading the league. USF off to their customary very good start, 15-4, 5-1 in the conference, and then you have a tie for 3rd between Houston and UCF at 4-2 in the American. Houston is 15-5 overall. UCF 12-7 overall. Half game ahead of Cincinnati at 3-2 in the league and 11-7. And then everyone after that is at 500 or below, except for Temple, who's 9-8. They're 1 game over 500. That's in terms of overall record. There's kind of a big dividing line between the top 5 in the American: UConn, USF, Houston, UCF, Cincinnati, and then Wichita, and then everyone else below them have kind of struggled a little bit this year. So, that's kind of the position that UCF is in right now. And as we look ahead to the schedule, Eric, at home for SMU on Saturday at 2. That is a very winnable game. SMU is 7-11 overall, 1-4 in the league. And then you go on the road at Tulsa on Saturday, January 27th. So you got a week off for that. Then you're at Cincinnati on Tuesday, January 30th, before you come home for Memphis on February 3rd, and then number 1 UConn on February 7th. That's a Wednesday night at 7 p.m. So, and by the way, that Memphis team is also struggling at 7-11. 2-3 in the league. So there are some opportunities here. Cincinnati, too, by the way. That's going to be a big game for UCF against that Cincinnati team, where these two teams are going to kind of be neck and neck in the standings, most likely, when they get to that point. So,
right.
So this is going to be a tough little stretch here coming up, especially those 2 road games and that one against Cincinnati.
Also, another game to circle, and I know it's a little far away, but it's a game I've circled. Sunday, February 18th, USF comes to the CFE Arena. That's a significant – first of all, circle that weekend. Well, you know this better than anybody having worked there. There's always that one weekend where there's just a million things going on.
Yeah, that's the spring sports equinox.
Yes. Well, look at that weekend. That's the weekend that baseball will open with Virginia on that Friday night of that weekend, and then Rice on that Saturday, and then Sanford on that Sunday. And remember, Rice and Virginia involved, so there's going to be a lot of college baseball going on all weekend long at the baseball's complex. Softball's home opener against Texas Tech is on that Saturday at 1 o'clock. They got FAMU that day as well. Men's basketball has got the big game against SMU, which is an 11 a.m. tip on that Saturday. And then the women have USF on that Sunday. I believe it's a noon tip-off. The good news, I guess, for all the people that work there is that that's on a Sunday and it's not following the men's game on Saturday.
God in heaven. I've worked those
I don't
games,
even know
man.
what.
Oh, that's brutal.
And I'm not including like tennis stuff or that might be going on that weekend. That is, but you talk about a huge weekend for a lot of the teams. That is the biggest weekend, one of the biggest weekends of the year for the UCF Athletics in that regard. And that women's game against USF is big. They only played once last year. They get to play twice this year, and I'll be interested to see how UCF responds at home against USF because, let's be honest, you're probably not going to get the UConn resume win, all right? It's just – I feel like if you keep it under 20, that might count as a resume builder, But if you can beat USF, then second place could be in play. And
all bets are off.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. So I don't know, man. It's going to be. I think that there's a chance if they get hot and if they get a little bit more healthy. I mean, you're not going to get Tolu or Fifi back, but if someone else can grab that, so it can pick up a little bit more of the scoring load from Aaliyah,
right,
consistently, I think we might have a little something to be excited about.
RPI. Yeah. RPI coming into the week was like 52, you want to be in the
I'll tell you right, it's 55.
What is it now?
55.
It's 55 now. So, look, they have to get a resume win. They don't really have a resume win, right? There's not a win that jumps out right now that says, whoa. But they'll have some chances. And
to be fair, though, that's the third best RPI in the American.
Oh, it is.
Yes,
but,
it is.
It is, but they're going to have to kind of, the Houston game is going to be big because those two teams are going to be battling it out if that USF home game I mentioned about. And obviously, look, when you get to the conference tournament up in Mohican in Connecticut, if you can get to the final, let's say, let's avoid the UConn side first. If you can get to the final against UConn, that might get you in as well. So a lot of basketball to go. I think you would agree with this. We have 2 postseason basketball teams. We just don't know if it's going to be an NCAA teams or NIT teams.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a very good point. So, and we'll find out in the next month, we're going to know exactly pretty much where they're going to be. So, let's put a bow on women's basketball again for, their next game home Saturday, January 20th at home against SMU. That's at 2 p.m. on the American Digital Network. All right. Real quick, I want to check in with tennis. They are starting up their season. The women's tennis team has been competing in the ITF 25,000 Lake Nona at Lake Nona. They start their regular team play schedule this Friday, January 19th, against number 15 South Carolina, and they've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 matches at home to start the season against North Texas, Alabama, Troy, and UNF. And the Troy and UNF, that's a doubleheader on Sunday, February 4th. So you can catch them twice in one day there down at Lake Nona. Men's tennis, by the way, they start their season on Monday at number 9 Florida. That's up in Gainesville. Then they head out to L.A. to face Utah State and another opponent to be determined on January 29th. They do a Sunday, Monday out in L.A. They're at Auburn February 4th. And then check out this schedule, Eric. They have their home opener February 7th. That's a Wednesday against UNF. Then they're off for almost a month. They don't play another match until Saturday, March 3rd. At least they're not scheduled to. And then in the span of 20 days, they play the following: Michigan, Baylor, Penn State, Virginia, Minnesota, Indiana, Miami, Arkansas, and Princeton, all at home. So props to Coach Roddick for scheduling here. But boy, that's a murderer's row. Yes, they're all at home, but boy, oh boy, that's going to be a tough stretch. We're hoping to. I'm hoping to see if we can get down there a little bit and catch a little bit more tennis in the coming weeks. We'll have to call up Brian Ormiston and see what's going on down there.
Make it happen, Jeffrey. I'm fired up. You know what I've been doing overnights. I'm watching the Aussie Open, man.
For some reason, man, you are a lunatic about tennis. You stay up all hours of the night and you watch the Australian Open like a vampire. I don't understand it, man. I
love it. I love the sport. Me and Chris Fowler, man.
Yeah,
How about Chris Fowler calls a national championship?
And Lee and Bob Lee out there keeping track of Australian Open tennis.
No, Bob Lee doesn't do the tennis. Now,
He doesn't do tennis anymore?
He's a soccer guy. No, he's exclusively soccer.
I thought he did tennis as well.
Nope. It's just Mr. Fowler, who obviously did the national championship game at Alabama, Georgia last Monday, then flew to Australia. Is calling the
Melbourne, right?
Yeah, it's a pretty good lifestyle there. But yeah, I've enjoyed tennis as a kid. I had a chance to talk to John Roddick when he arrived here, not this past fall, but last fall. And great guy, obviously the brother of Andy Roddick, and led the tennis team to the NCAA tournament last year. First time that UCF Tennis has been to the NCAA tournament since 2005.
Yep.
So, we'll see what he – and I know he had a great recruiting class coming in this year, so we'll see how you mentioned the schedule, but let's see if they're up for it.
Right. So we'll be following that as they move along. All right, so let's quickly finish with this. I wanted to talk to I think I mentioned some of this earlier. So I'm getting into trouble with a couple of Syracuse fans about.
No, you?
Yeah, me. That they were kind of getting on UCF's case they were getting on UCF's case because UCF has scheduled 2 ACC opponents in their non-conference schedule in 2018. So Pitt and UNC, and those games are official because the ACC just hammered down their schedule and released it. And a couple of Syracuse fans were like, "Oh well, yeah, UCF, you're getting, Pitt and North Carolina, huh? Oh, boy, you're really boosting your resume there. And I'm like, wait a second. Shut up, you Syracuse fans. And I love Syracuse. I actually, the first time I found out about Syracuse was actually watching Syracuse football, not Syracuse basketball. So I'm a Syracuse football fan at a basketball school, right? Meanwhile, here's Syracuse. Let me read you their outrageous football schedule for next year. Okay, I know they're in the ACC, but your non-conference schedule's at Western Michigan, home for something called Wagner, home for UConn. Okay, I get it. And then they play Notre Dame at Yankee Stadium next year. Okay, 2019 they are at Liberty. They play a road game at Liberty. They're at Maryland. Okay, fine, Big Ten, whatever. Home for Western Michigan and home for Holy Cross. I thought Holy Cross dropped football 20 years ago. I'll be honest with you. I couldn't believe when I saw that. They've also got they've actually got 2 more games with Liberty on the schedule in 2020 and 2021. They got Albany on the schedule. I didn't know Albany had football. I do not want to hear it from FBS schools, from so-called Power 5 schools, especially Syracuse University, about our schedule. They're complaining about it, saying, okay, hey, we got these 2 ACC opponents. They're like, oh, big deal. Hey, shut up, okay? UCF is trying to actually schedule in a way so that what happened this year doesn't happen again, and they shouldn't be criticized for that. Meanwhile, UCF is trying to schedule everybody that they possibly can. Now, What I would like to see, though, is, we had the fans who did the billboard, in Tuscaloosa, right? I almost said Tuscaloosa, right? Where, hey, Alabama, how about a home and home? I'm like, home and home? No. Let's play them wherever. We'll play them in Tuscaloosa. We'll play them in Birmingham. We'll play them in my backyard. I don't care. Let's play them wherever. Let's offer them a game wherever they want.
Yeah, I would. First of all, Syracuse is trying to. What that schedule tells you is they're trying to be bowl eligible. I mean, they're trying to get enough wins to be bowl eligible. They've had their struggles there.
But wait a minute. No, they can't be, because they're playing Wagner. That's not a one double. That's not an FBS team.
Yeah.
We don't know what the schedule we don't know what the scholarship situation is going to be. Hello, Florida State.
Look, and that was proven incorrect. They were fine.
But okay, but if that's the case, don't play Holy Cross.
Doesn't Jim Boeheim does the same thing in men's basketball? Isn't that like a Syracuse thing where they don't play? Like Jim Boeheim doesn't even leave the state.
That's true. The legend with Syracuse is that Syracuse basketball doesn't leave the state of New York until New Year's Day.
Which is, by the way, a good segue, because we talk about, a lot of chatter about this home and hey, well, teams won't play UCF here and this or that. Well, that's not just a football thing. I mean, basketball is the same thing. Let me ask you this question. Is North Carolina going to come play at the CFP Arena anytime soon? Is Michigan State going to come down here? Kansas? I mean, they don't. So it's not like football is the only sport where the Power 5 teams don't play at certain non-Power 5 schools, all right? So let's not act like this is just a football thing. It happens in men's basketball. I'm with you. If you want to play these big games and these big opponents, you got to sometimes do what you got to do, whether it be play in a neutral field, right? In college basketball, the big thing is a lot of teams now will play these teams in NBA arenas, so they can showcase themselves in an NBA arena. UCF, that's how UCF got Florida. If you remember many years ago, when they beat Florida in Donnie Jones's first year, that was played at the Amway Center because Florida would never play at the CFE arena. So you got to be creative sometimes with the schedule. And you mentioned this last episode. Boise State, what have they done? They played Georgia at the Georgia Dome, beat them there. They played Virginia Tech at where the Washington Redskins play, beat them there. That's what you're going to have to do if you want to beef up the schedule. Now, I'll defend UCF's schedule in this regard from 2018 is North Carolina and Pittsburgh, when you sign that deal, these are 2 programs that have been consistent bowl teams. Mm-hmm. Larry Fedora recently with North Carolina, they were an ACC title contender. It just so happens that everything fell off the cliff for North Carolina in 2017, and the same thing for Pittsburgh. But you saw that Pittsburgh is capable by knocking off Miami at the end of the year. And, oh, by the way, they beat Clemson the year before when Clemson won the national title. So it's not like Pittsburgh. That's a pretty good 2 games to play. I think if you're UCF, you're kind of hoping that those 2 programs bounce back in 2018 just to make your resume look better if you were to happen to beat those 2 teams. But you're right. Alabama is never going to come and play UCF at UCF. So if you want to play Alabama, you're probably going to have to play them at Alabama or if you get them to agree to it, in a neutral field, kind of like what the Florida States and Miamis had to do back in the 80s, and that's how they got them program up to mainstream national respectability.
Well, it was a different landscape back then because you had 100 independent teams too. That's the other thing. So, back then Miami had a little bit more, and Florida State, by the way, had a little bit more flexibility with schedules because you could play, South Carolina, you could play Penn State because those schools were independent at the time too.
But the reality is this: we could talk all we want about the Auburn win at the Peach Bowl, but if you follow the sport for a long time, beating Auburn in the Peach Bowl isn't what's going to get you over the hump. What it is beating Auburn in an Auburn-type team in September and October. And I'll use Houston as an example. Houston beat Florida State in the Peach Bowl. But that's not the win that people think about Houston. The win that they keep bringing up is what? Was the following year when they knocked off Oklahoma in Houston at Reliant Stadium. That was the win. They're like, whoa. They just beat Oklahoma on opening weekend of the season. And that all of a sudden the hype machine was on Houston. The media jumped on them. Hey, if they can go under, they should get considered yada, yada, yada. Remember, that was the whole Big 12 talk.
Right.
They beat Oklahoma and Houston. That's when you make noise, is when you beat those teams in September and October. It has a bigger impact than when you do in bowl games.
Can I point out one thing? You mentioned Boise State earlier. I just want to read off some of their future non-conference opponents. Ready?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Next year, Troy at Washington State, home for Virginia at BYU.
Pretty good.
Okay. 2018, at Troy, UConn, at Oklahoma State, home for BYU. Not bad. 2019, Florida State at Jacksonville, Marshall, Portland State, at BYU.
You got Florida State in Florida. I mean, it's pretty good.
Okay, 2020, Georgia Southern, Florida State at home, at Marshall, home for BYU.
Obviously, the BYU has become like an annual series there, so that's kind of like
that ends in 2024, at least for right now. That contract goes through 2023. They also got, in the future, they got Houston, Oklahoma State again, Oregon State, Michigan State. Rice is on there. Well, Rice isn't on there. But Houston in 2024, Cincinnati in 2024 as well. Another one with Washington State. East Carolina is going up there. So let's hand it to Boise State.
That's the benchmark. Yeah.
So
that's why they get ranked in these polls. That's why they get the benefit of the doubt, because they've done this year in, year out. I remember them back when they beat Oregon. They beat Oregon and Chip Kelly. They beat them at home. Yes, when Scott Frost had to hold back LeGarrette Blount after he punched
he hold back LeGarrette Blount. He practically picked him up and hauled him off the field. Did you see that video? That was amazing.
Yes, I did. It was great. I remember it
I remember when that happened, and I didn't put 2 and 2 together until recently. I was like, wait a minute. That's Scott Frost? LeGarrette Blount is a large man.
Correct.
And here's Scott Frost picking him up like one of those oversized teddy bears that you see at a county fair and hauling him off the field. It was unbelievable. Go YouTube that, people.
Oh, it's very entertaining there. So, that's the name of the game. That's how this stuff works. That's why Boise State was ranked so high in some of these. But, look, I thought Boise State – I remember in 2006, I was the one that was screaming that Boise State should get a shot at the national title when they were undefeated, when Florida won it in a year where they lost at home to Ole Miss. So – this is not, what we just went through isn't the first time it's ever happened in college football, and it's probably going to happen again. By the way, did you see some of the new committee members? Did you see a familiar?
Is on the, I think is on a, he's on the American Athletic Conference's media rights committee. I did see that from the recent.
But the playoff committee.
Okay, what do you got?
Todd Stansberry will be in it.
Interesting.
Former UCF AD is now the Georgia Tech AD. Castiglione, Ducos, the Oklahoma AD, was one of the more respected ADs in the country, will be the chairman for the playoff committee. But Todd Stansberry in there. Ronnie Lott it's going to be part of the committee there, former player.
Okay, let me say, I have tremendous respect and admiration for Ronnie Lott. When I was a kid, by the way, I remember when the Super Bowl, this is my crowning athletic achievement of my life. Remember when the Super Bowl was in Miami? It was the Chargers and the 49ers.
Yes,
okay.
I do.
So there's this thing called the world's largest Super Bowl party. And it was in Broward. It was at the Broward Convention Center, and it's this big thing. It was put on, I think, by Players Inc. Right? And there's this competition where if you make like 3 basketball shots, like a free throw, a college 3, and an NBA 3, you get to come back later and go in a shootout for a 7-day cruise. Well, lo and behold, 11-year-old, or no, not even 10-year-old me made it. And then I won the shootout against, and when you win the shootout against the other people who made all 3 of those shots, you get to shoot off against Ronnie Lott, who couldn't have been nicer. I think at that time he was a member of the New York Jets. Nicest guy.
So
I still have my picture of me with Ronnie Lott at the.
And now you're going to rip him, aren't you? You're going to rip him now.
No, I'm not going to rip. But I would want to know. They have had former players up there, right?
Yes.
I have tremendous respect for Ronnie Lott. I want to know how you get on that committee.
Okay.
I mean, I just want to know. It's.
Well, reach out to Todd Stansberry. Maybe he can get his. Seriously,
maybe I can reach out to Todd Stansberry.
Maybe get him on. Look, I know some people are mad because there's no, it's all Power 5 and this or that, and and I see people comment that they're biased, and of course they're human beings. Human beings have biases. Doesn't matter what human being you put there, because I've heard people say, well, why don't you put coaches in it? Well, coaches have biasness too. Media people. People I've heard say they should be in the committee. Media people are biased too. Look at the media in the South compared to other media people. Everybody's biased towards their regions. The only way you're ever going to get rid of biasness is what I've said for many years, and I've said on this show, and I'll continue to say it, automatic bids. Until you put a playoff system where you have automatic bids, you're always going to have some sort of biasness. And by the way, administrative ADs, they're in basketball committees too. They're in other sports. It's not just football.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be. I don't know how much of an effect that's going to have. In terms of will this move the ball any for the group of 5? I just don't think it will. One thing I did want to point out, I did mention it a little bit earlier. Sorry, I overstepped it, but the American had their their winter meeting in Atlanta on January 10th. It's about a week ago. Interesting. Couple things that came out from this. Number one, the athletic directors they approved the expansion of the men's soccer tournament from 4 to 6 teams starting in 2018.
Ooh.
They are expanding the baseball umpiring crews from 3 to 4 starting in 2019. Okay. And a couple of things also, a little housekeeping, but Rick Hart was of SMU is appointed to the conference's AD Executive Committee. UConn AD David Benedict was selected as the liaison for the Men's Basketball Coaches Committee and the SAAC, and Danny White was named to the league's Media Rights Advisory Committee. Good move by Danny, certainly, and certainly by the American as well, since you're talking about the number one, UCF and USF being the top media markets in the American. No, that would be Houston. Houston is certainly number one, but I think UCF is I think Orlando is the 3rd highest rated media market in the. Fourth actually behind Houston and Dallas and Tampa.
I'm sure they'll bring up the big numbers that UCF did with USF TV ratings-wise when they do their TV negotiations. Just make sure, everybody, give credit where it came from, blackandgoldbanneret.com, all right? That's all I'm saying.
Well, no, I can't do that. We got to give credit to the Americans since that's from their press release from Providence. So, but I meant the more things that you want to take a look at. Yeah, and the TV and by the way, that's what you can do. We posted a page where you can actually have where we're trying to keep track of UCF's TV ratings, like of all time. We're just going to keep that updated. If you go under Night Insight on our menu, you can check out that page. It's UCF's historical TV ratings. Now, it's not comprehensive. It's as far back as we could find, going back to 2013. We're still working on it, but at least you can kind of sort them by highest rating, sort them by date, sort them by viewer number, and that'll give you an idea of where the different UCF games stack up in terms of national attention in history. So make sure you check on that. All right, so let's wrap this up, Eric Lopez. What do you have coming up this week?
Well, I'm not going to be sleeping much because I'm going to be nervous and waiting for the UCF-USF men's basketball game. So I'll probably be watching a lot of Australian Open tennis and between now and then.
You're doing that to yourself.
But no, otherwise, other than that, actually, I do some podcasts. It's not the only podcast I do. I'm a host of the In the Circle on FastPitchNews.com softball podcast. Softball season's just around the corner. I just had the Tennessee Lady Vols head coach, Karen Weekly, on. And the reason I bring that up is she's the president of the NFCA, which is the Coaches Association, basically, in softball. And they have a big, big topic right now in the sport about coaches taking a stand against early recruitment and recruiting. I mean, there's young ladies that are committing to programs, Jeff, in 7th grade, 6th grade. At the rate that we're going, your daughter's going to be committed.
Yeah, I mean, Eliza, do I have to start contacting Renee now?
Yeah, you better be careful.
She's 2 months old, for crying out loud.
Right. Well, she might be a year away from verbally committing at the rate we're going. So the coaches are trying to put a stop to that with the NCAA. And I go in depth in that with Coach Weekly, who's the president of the NFCA, who's also obviously an all-time great head coach at Tennessee. So that's an interesting listen. And then hoping to get Coach Gillespie, speaking of which, within the next week or two to get ready for UCF softball, which is just around the corner. So I'll be working on that and on other goodies.
Yeah, it should be good. It was going to be fun coming up with the next couple of weeks as we approach the spring sports equinox, and we'll be hopefully hitting up Media Day for baseball and reaching out to Coach Gillespie as well for softball, seeing how that goes. We got a lot coming up for you on blackandgoldbanneret.com as well. And you got another article that's coming up that I actually have to edit and post real soon, real quick. What do you got coming up?
Top 10 games in UCF basketball history at the CFE Arena. I realize it's kind of gotten lost in the shuffle with football, obviously, and everything's going on with the success there. But we're in the 10-year anniversary of the basketball arena opening, the CFE Arena, which opened in November of 2007. So it passed the 10-year mark on that. So I highlighted in what I thought was the top 10 games ever played in that arena with UCF basketball. So that'll be coming out soon, and you can agree or disagree with it.
Sounds good. Let us know at blackandgoldbanneret.com or on our Facebook page, facebook.com/blackandgoldbanneret. Follow us on Twitter at UCF_Banneret. You can follow me at Jeff_Sharon. You can follow Eric at Eric Lopez Elo. Don't forget also to follow Brian Murphy at Spokes_Murphy and Derek Warden at _DS Warden. Tell your friends about our podcast. Subscribe, rate, share. We're on Google Play, Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and TuneIn. And thanks once again also to our sponsor, the Unger Real Estate Group, WeSellOrlando.net. Visit WeSellOrlando.net or Facebook.com/WeSellOrlando. Thanks once again to Sam for all his support. For Eric Lopez, I'm Jeff Sharon. This has been the Black Gold Banneret Podcast. I'll catch you again next week.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.